Welcome to Tremaine's Tangents. Today we are discussing the book 1984 by George Orwell. Now, we have just woken up, so there's going to be a little bit of energy missing. So, Jag, what do you remember of the book 1984?
So, as you said, George Orwell, considered to be a masterpiece of dystopian fiction. Can't remember what year it's set in, but it was sort of a near future. Ah, you got me. It's 1984, isn't it?
And that club again on Steam is We Hate Jag Club.
It was a wee jokey joke there. So it was written in 1949. So
yeah.
Whilst I'd put the genre as sort of near future, it was supposed to be 35 years ahead, which is... Do you consider that near future,
I
generally speaking?
That near future. I think 100 years is near future, and beyond that is far future.
Okay.
But that's just me. I'm just a special little duck.
Mm.
Who can't fuck. Right.
Well, yeah, where we draw those lines is opinion, really.
Do you think so?
I mean, there's things where everyone surely agrees, right? Like I look at altered carbon. That's not near future. That's far future. Star Wars, clearly distant past. It says it at the start, man.
Fuck.
Long time ago. Far away.
Star Wars. Anyway, so we're just going to talk a little bit about. We're not going to go because everyone knows the story. 1984. It's
one of those ones where even if you haven't read it, you do know it.
Yeah.
It's like if you haven't watched Titanic, you know Titanic.
Now, I thought this initially, and then I asked a few people what they thought happened in 1984, and I found out not everyone actually knows what happens in 1984.
Turns out that they just watched the movie V for Vendetta. 1984 has been made into a film, of course. The film, 1984, was released in 1984. Apparently, that was on purpose. So that's cool. I remember seeing it.
Shut up.
Well, not in theatre, but I have seen the movie version as well, and pretty faithful. I'd say it catches the feeling where it's like it's bleak.
Yeah.
Like everyone looks sad, a little bit dirty. It's very much British dystopia.
Or current day Britain, yeah. So...
Yeah, there's parts of England which are basically... No. Not really, which I suppose comes to the... Maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit, but... How much of it was, like, prescience? Like, how much of it's come to pass? We have that surveillance state. We have the official sources of truth. The censorship of, unapproved material. How much of that is?
Well, so this is where I wonder if what 1984 got wrong was how forceful suppression of people would be. Because I would still argue there's a suppression of it's not a suppression of truth, but there's a not diversion, you know what I'm trying to say. The truth sort of gets muddied up with bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And we are constantly guided towards official stances.
Yeah, but even then, we're still not like. Oftentimes, official stances will be true, at least in I've seen so far in New Zealand, and
to a reasonable extent, yes, as far as is practicable.
Yeah, and oftentimes people feel like they need to rebel just for the sake of rebelling. Would just be my 2 cents.
Yeah. I think there's the mindless self-indulgence song, "You'll Rebel to Anything," which I think addresses that in a quite fun way. Now, mindless self-indulgence aren't particularly good, but at least they know that. I'll give them that. But yeah, we're talking about the bleakness and all that. Sort of brings me to my favourite piece of poetry from the book, or I consider it poetic, which is you've probably already jumped ahead on this one and know what I'm going to say here, but if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The most famous quotation from that book, and I think probably the most poetic line from the book. Like, there's a reason it's so thoroughly quoted. The imagery of it, I mean, it's very negative. Poetry doesn't have to be about butterflies and kisses, but
no. But what is interesting about that statement? Maybe the reason it's not 1984 hasn't come to pass, and that would be because if you stamp in someone's face, they tend to not take too kindly to that.
It sets up a system that people want to push back on, as opposed to what we were saying, Brave New World, which is set up a system that people want to be in, where you control them.
Yeah, free sex, free drugs.
Yeah, garden. Yeah, the garden's nice. Why would I want to leave?
You're going to say that again, you lagged a bit.
It's the whole walled garden thing where, you are trapped, but the garden's nice. I'm okay being here. It's the gilded prison. And yeah, if you don't want the prisoners to revolt, make them think they're happy.
Yeah, I wrote something similar to that, but it hasn't been accepted, so...
You wrote some... Wait, what? You've been writing? Do you have a script for this?
No.
Because you usually you send me a script and I read it and I do the funny parts, but this last one you sent me, first of all, on actual paper in my mail, which surprised me. Usually you email it through, and I don't mean to suggest anything here, Tremaine, but this is just crudely drawn crayon pictures of beloved cartoon characters having adult time.
What?
And then this one just says, be funny. If you want this podcast to take off, you're really going to have to give me more to work with, I'm sorry.
You're going to have to stop drinking while you're writing up the script.
Stop drinking while you're driving. That's an important first step.
Fucking hell. How tired are we? We're fucking... It's like 9:30 in the morning and we're like fucking dead. I don't know what... My excuse is that I didn't go to sleep until like 1 a.m. and that was with the assistance of tramadol and some other stuff. And what's your excuse?
I haven't gone to sleep yet. I stayed up all night thinking about what I'm going to say, you know?
You fucking bean.
My opinions on the 3 macro nations, East Asia. What are the 3 macro nations in
Oceania
1984?
and
Oceania, East Asia, and
Eurasia?
Eurasia, yep. Now, do you think that's a realistic separation of geography?
No. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing also. I don't understand what year was this written again? Sorry?
1949, so before the victory of Mao Zedong's Chinese Communist Party.
Right. So here's the thing.
If it matters.
Stalinist Russia was at its peak at that point. So the Iron Curtain was thoroughly and firmly in place. Stalin was about 4 years away from dying, and it looked like an inevitable communist wave was going to happen.
Yeah, well, in universe, the Soviet Union captured, or conquered rather, all of mainland Europe. From Portugal to the Bering Strait, under a Stalinist or neo-Stalinist regime. So, you don't think that's likely?
No!
Oh, in hindsight, we can say definitely not.
I think even then it would have been a gross oversimplification of what was possible with Stalin.
So while writing it, it was intentionally fantastical.
I don't think it was intentional. I think Orwell just thought. Well, actually, hold on. Let's not get bogged down in the fact that this book isn't actually about totalitarianism, is it? In the form of a gun to the back of the head.
It is partly about that.
It is, but the bigger part is that it's about the control of language. Now, if you read Orwell's essays on the English language, you know that he was he had big thoughts around the ideas of how freedom of speech, or how the structure of speech was important. He talked about how limiting certain words would create a limited thinking space. He talked about overcomplicating words would create a soft language.
So the line I have from him in the book is, But if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. Of course, that's the sort of negative side of the same idea, because it's a standard thing of, if you think something's bad, you have the bad guys say it. Right?
Yeah.
Like all about the thought and language corrupting each other, whereas in a positive sense, it's more with freedom of thought and language are intertwined, in that you have to be able to think about something to talk about something. You have to be able to talk about something to share the ideas, which allows people to think about it.
Right, but at the same time, Orwell's characters are not necessarily good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about, people being a product of their times, the characters in this book are a product of their environment for sure. Their environment being that boot on a human head.
It also so here's the thing, right? It failed to predict. So some of its predictions are faulty. It failed in its prediction of the Soviet Union taking over Europe. It failed in the idea that
the Chinese and Japanese conquests.
That too.
Basically, the three macro states. I don't think that was a prediction. That was just a setting.
Right.
I mean, because how do we decide what is prediction? Like, this is a fiction book. This wasn't, I think this is likely. This is an almost fantasy setting.
Right. So
but he's used real world locations to make it more relatable.
Relatable or realistic?
Sorry, realistic? The more you tie something to the real world, the less realistic it becomes in a way.
Yeah?
It's like we've talked about with science fiction technology. Right. If you describe it too much, it becomes less plausible. Unless you're Alistair Reynolds or someone like that, where you describe it more and it becomes more and more real. But once you throw in midichlorians, it becomes stupid. Once you throw in... Yeah.
I like how your only example is midichlorians, which is not as stupid as...
It's my first example. I just didn't want to rag on Star Wars too much.
Oh.
But, like, so much good science fiction's just like, we do that with unobtainium, it's fine, get over it.
Well, what's that? Well, it's a MacGuffin.
And so much bad science fiction, or bad aspects of otherwise good science fiction, Star Trek, the power is dilithium crystals. Well, dilithium crystals are found elsewhere, so they couldn't get there without the dilithium crystals to power the ships. Oh, well, then the dilithium crystals are actually more of a catalyst, and there's other ways to do it, but they're less stable and more complicated. And it's like, you're just ruining everything. You've added complexity without adding interest. And I do wonder if that's happening at all in here with, like, I liked Oceania, Eurasia, East Asia. It's like, cool, I have a basic sort of understanding of that. Once you bring in, well, the Americas that are part of Oceania, it's like, why isn't that like Pan-American and a territory? Yeah. So once you add in more detail, you're adding in more gaps in a way.
Yeah, and gaps in logic tend to be the problem here. Is the so how do I put this? If you were to let's take 1984 the book,
Okay.
and then compare it to 1984 the real world, because he did name a year that something would occur, right? So it can't be entirely.
He just wanted it far ahead enough that things will have changed enough, but not changed so much.
Nothing had really changed.
He first conceptualized the book in 1944, and the choice of 84 was just because it was a far enough length of time for changes to have happened, basically. I mean, don't forget, this is a fellow who had lived through, well, both wars. And so, at that point, he was himself 40. And he was like, what was the world like when I was born? What is it like now? And that was the level of change required to fit his perceived setting. If he'd gone for something more extreme in the changes, he probably would have just set a further date. Like, oh, my lifetime, it would take twice that. Okay, well then you got 2024. Basically.
Oh, shit.
So the specific year doesn't matter so much. It's just that it was far enough. We can compare it to real 1984 if you want. I feel it's probably more suitable to compare to now. But up to you.
Well, okay. So what I was going to say is when we think about 1984 as the year, so the United States was the other supreme superpower. The Soviet Union was beginning to had entered its stagnation period, and Mao's China, I think at that point, was starting to turn capitalist.
Yeah, I remember quite well. So the idea of personal electronics was really starting to take off around then as well. So some people would have pages. Walkmans didn't exist yet, but boomboxes were around. And so it was actually a bit of a spike in individualism and subcultures, I'd say.
Right.
On a smaller level. Like if you zoom in, you get this. If you zoom out, you get the state of the world.
I want to make. So Stalin wasn't like Big Brother in that Stalin used a lot of Machiavellianism to keep control.
Yeah, so the society is envisioned in 1984 is supposed to be a mix of Stalinist and Nazi. Sort of their mechanisms with, frankly, English, because there was an English fascist
Yeah, Oswald Mosley.
At the time of him writing. Mos Eisley? No, I think that's Star Wars again.
Oswald Mosley.
Yes, Oswald Mosley. Previously a Conservative MP, and then later a Labour man.
He was a man of action.
So that was the British Union of Fascists you're referring to. So they'd been banned in 1940, but the movement still existed.
Right.
Just because shut down by the government for being
Nazis.
They were a bit pro-Nazi, but they were also quite monarchistic.
We're having a bit of internet trouble, so we may have to cut ourselves short there. So, Jag, any wrap-up thoughts you want to add in?
Certain things he was prescient on, like the telescreen was quite a good prediction. I know the idea already existed of like view screens and televideo conferencing.
Right.
But it is, I mean, if you get a smart TV now, it is listening to you. Some of them have cameras. And there is currently a patent for a TV that looks at your eyes to make sure you're watching ads. Like, where he was right, I'd say he was right not in that... Like, so the things he was like, this could happen. And it did, but not by the government. It happened by corporations.
Yeah. Despite being a socialist, he failed to see the power of corporatism. Yeah, and I would say that's my wrapping up thought as well.
Yeah. The government is spying on us? Yes. Is your phone spying on you more than that? Yes.
Alright. Well, thank you for listening. I know this has been a little low energy and a little short, but tell us what you thought. Make fun of us. Remember, there's a Facebook page and Instagram page listed in the description below. Remember, we upload every Tuesday at 7 a.m, even if we have to drag Jag out of bed early and me out of bed at all. And remember, the creation of creativity has been postponed to March, and but get excited for it because we are getting it ready. And this
is one we're going to actually script to an extent as well. It's going to be of a higher quality, and before we record those, I will reboot my router so that my internet is a bit better, just in case it is on my end that the problems are happening.
I think it was both of our ends. Okay. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh my god, that was terrible. Oh shit, I didn't end the recording.